Before the apocalypse, I took out a 1 billion yuan loan from the bank, then spent 100 million to build an iron fortress and splurged another 200 million to buy a warehouse supermarket, completely emptying it overnight. After getting everything sorted, I collapsed on the bed, tilted my head back and finished 30 bottles of red wine, closing my eyes as I quietly waited for that moment to arrive. Only I knew that the moment the clock struck 12 tonight, the entire globe would plunge into a long frozen era, and terrifying blizzards would ruthlessly swallow the vast majority of humanity. As the 12 o'clock bell chimed, a mysterious particle stream enveloped the globe, and an eerie white light suddenly lit up the night sky. Even though it was midnight, it was as bright as noon. Before people could even process it, heavy snow was already fluttering down. At first, it was no bigger than ants, but in the blink of an eye, it transformed into a raging blizzard sweeping across the skies. The entire city's sky was obscured by endless snow, street traffic instantly paralyzed, and a piercing chill filled every inch of the air like a wild beast. Panicked crowds scrambled back home to escape the cold, while news of the global extreme drop in temperature exploded across the internet. In an instant, wails echoed through the entire online world. People were still whining about winter coming way too early, left with only light autumn shirts at home, and some even acting like fools, celebrating the fact that they didn't have to go to work tomorrow. I just sneered and shook my head, secretly mocking them. This was no ordinary heavy snow. It would never stop, temperatures would plummet, and resources would dry up. The only things waiting for people were freezing and starving to death. Looking at the mountain of supplies piled up inside my house, enough for me to squander for 100 nights, I cozy up to the lit fireplace, curled up on the sofa, and drifted into a deep sleep. Hell opened its eyes, and snow had already swallowed the entire city. Outside the window was a vast expanse of white, streets and bushes completely vanished, as if they had never existed. The blizzard was still howling, and the television broadcast disaster updates in a rolling ticker. Temperatures plummeted overnight to minus 100 degrees, and global species were nearly brought to extinction. Tens of thousands failed to hold on just last night, with coastal areas frozen solid into ice sculptures. This news drove the crowd completely crazy, rushing to grab supplies, but it was already far too late. Outdoor temperatures were still frantically bottoming out. Front doors sealed shut by deep drifts of snow, and desperate people could only pray for this disaster to end. Meanwhile, I was leisurely sipping red wine indoors, cutting my steak, not feeling cold at all. After all, this safe house built at a cost of 100 million consistently maintained a comfortable constant temperature of 22 degrees. Suddenly my phone vibrated, and the caller ID showed that saintly green Lotus woman. She was crying on the other end, wanting to borrow some food, swearing she would double it back after the disaster. I hung up and refused without a single shred of hesitation. I knew all too well how venomous and vicious that woman's heart was. In my past life, I had been fooled by her pitiful facade, handing over all my food, only for her to turn around, bite the hand that fed her, team up with outsiders to murder me, and even boil soup with my bones. Thinking of this, I wanted nothing more than to slaughter her right then and there, but my reason kept my murderous intent in check. I turned around and texted her back. "Oh my, why didn't you say so earlier? The food I stocked up has run out, and all I have left is a steak I got fresh this morning." After sending the text, I deliberately took a photo of the steak and red wine on the table, and even threw in a selfie of myself wearing a thin pair of pajamas to send to her. The moment she saw that photo, the green Lotus's eyes nearly popped out of her head. She couldn't believe that in this freezing, bitter weather, I was actually wearing pajamas and whining and dining. Gazing at the steak and red wine in the photo, drool pooled all over the green Lotus's mouth, and she immediately replied in seconds, her every word dripping with greed, screaming that she wanted to eat too. If I were my former self, I would have rushed to deliver it to her doorstep, but the current me was no longer a simp. I lazily replied, "Want to eat? Go buy it at the supermarket yourself then." Upon reading this reply, the green Lotus blew her top right on the spot. I couldn't be bothered to entertain her any longer, casually picking up the books I had hoarded and reading them with great relish. To deal with the apocalypse, I stockpiled massive amounts of books, because knowledge never weighs you down. Grasping these professional fields of expertise could save your life at critical moments. The third day was the real main event, and knowing full well what was about to happen, I stayed up all night, just waiting for this moment. The global blackout. The power failure triggered a chain reaction, and the water supply system collapsed right after. The loss of water and electricity plunged ordinary people into deep darkness, whereas I had long since turned on 2 silent generators to take care of the power. I smiled as I scrolled through my phone, seeing the whole web crying over the power and water cuts, while officials lied that maintenance would fix it soon. I shook my head silently. Authorities were already overwhelmed by this point, and the only thing you could rely on to survive this doomsday was yourself. The true apocalypse only officially kicked off today. Deprived of modern society's electricity and food, humanity was about to welcome a massive wave of deaths. As time ticked on and supplies grew desperately scarce, thugs began to form gangs to rob places, and unscrupulous merchants scalped instant noodles to 1,000 points a bucket. Human nature was laid bare under the apocalypse. Just as I was hiding at home watching the show, I was suddenly pulled into a group chat. Glancing at it, it was filled entirely with my next-door neighbors and other residents in the complex. They were passionately discussing in the chat how my house was packed with supplies, food, and drinks, and even fuel, making my life practically feel like heaven. Several other people immediately jumped out to testify, claiming they saw me hauling things into my house with their own eyes and promptly threw my video of eating steak and drinking red wine right into the group. That completely blew up the group chat. Everyone started engaging in moral kidnapping, accusing me of being selfish and blaming all the suffering they endured on me. They even clamored that I had to share my supplies, or else they would fight to the death to breach my front door. Moral kidnappers, people begging on their knees, and freaks preaching grand principles all crawled out of the woodwork. It all boiled down to one core motive. They wanted a free ride on my supplies. Looking at these shameless remarks, I coldly replied, "Are we even that close? Why the hell should my stuff be shared with you?" In such a desperate plight, this bunch was already on the verge of a nervous breakdown, so trying to reason with them was pure nonsense. To stay alive, they could cast aside all their bottom lines without a second thought. I knew very well that in my past life, when I kindly opened the door, these neighbors rushed in and immediately smashed a brick over my head, can't wait to dismember and eat me before I even stopped breathing. I had long since seen through the ugly faces of this group. This time around, I was going to thoroughly toy with these pitiful yet hateful maggots. I started a voice call directly in the group, pulled out a bottle of Australian vintage red wine and top-tier French foie gras, and broadcasted myself eating and drinking live. Witnessing this scene, the group members bombarded my private messages like crazy. Quite a few female residents even sent suggestive messages, evidently well-versed in the current market conditions. Knowing that money was now nothing more than waste paper, they spontaneously offered their bodies in exchange for the food in my hands. Even male residents couldn't resist the temptation, screaming to acknowledge me as their boss. What was most disgusting was that there were even gay guys trying to throw themselves at me. After skimming through a round of private messages and finding it utterly dull, I grabbed a phone stand and set the phone up in front of me, anticipating these people pulling off some new tricks. I just sprawled on the couch like that, left hand holding red wine, right hand holding foie gras, cozily appreciating that poignant yet deadly heavy snow outside the window. Half a month flashed by in a blink. The heavy snow outside the window showed no sign of stopping whatsoever, the entire city completely reduced to a white wasteland. Based on my memory, this snow still had another month to go, and anything below the 4th floor would be completely submerged. As for how long it would last after that, even I couldn't predict. Bored out of my mind, I flipped through the neighbors' messages. Among all this junk info, one person's name caught my eye. Joe K. What she sent wasn't a pathetic cry for pity, nor was it private photos, but rather a calm and rational proposal for an exchange of terms. "Mr. Zhang, my food and medical supplies are running low, and I hope to receive your aid. In return, I can provide you with medical services moving forward." Her image quickly flashed across my mind. She was a female doctor at Tianhai First People's Hospital, 26 years old, tall in stature, at least 1.75 meters. What left the deepest impression on me wasn't her delicate, clear face, but rather her stunning, devilish figure. I couldn't help but sigh. True to being a doctor, she was extremely rational. Instead of begging pitifully, she negotiated a value exchange. Pretty interesting. I quite appreciated Joe K's attitude. In this apocalypse, only those who demonstrated value were qualified to earn the right to survive. Yet I didn't plan on letting her in. In the end times, no one could be trusted. I decided to make her my eyes and ears, keeping an eye on the neighbors' movements to give me early warnings. Of course, I wasn't afraid because I had spent so much money building this iron fortress, custom designing countless defensive features precisely for this day. Sure enough, seeing that I was impervious to both soft and hard tactics, the neighbors completely lost their minds. Sunji Chao set up a new group chat, pulling in every single living soul except for me. Witnessing my luxurious life, their eyes bled with extreme jealousy, desperate to hack me into pieces right then and there so they could take my place and enjoy all of this. Rallying slogans shook the world. Sabers in hand, follow me, kill. Zhang Yi's crazy drive to grab supplies practically overflowed the screen. Right at that moment, Zhou Kei sent a warning saying they were getting ready to storm the building. I glanced at it and calmly replied with 3 words. I know. Zhou Ke was sitting on her own sofa, looking at me, and replied calmly, brows tightly knitted. Every single household has been mobilized and gone crazy after seeing those videos. Aren't you panicking? From her perspective, the most sensible approach right now was to hand over a portion of the supplies to appease public anger and buy safety. Otherwise, no matter how strong a single person was, it was impossible to fight against so many people. Yet I just gave a slight smile, too lazy to explain, simply replying, remember, you must not come over this time. I'll only warn you once. Just sit back and watch a good show. Zhou Kei's brows knitted tightly, full of puzzlement. She genuinely couldn't fathom where I got the confidence to dare take on over 100 lunatics in the entire building by myself. Not long after, a faint vibration came from beneath my feet. That was the commotion of over 100 people stomping up the stairs. Before long, someone lost their patience and rushed up to smash against the door. Zhang Yi, get your ass out here! If you don't want to die a miserable death, this is your last chance. Don't wait until we smash our way in and slaughter you. It'll be too late to cry then. I didn't hold back against them either, and directly hit the high-voltage electricity button. That guy Xiaohu, who was frantically smashing the door, was instantly locked onto by a fierce current, his entire face painfully twisted and deformed. What was most terrifying was that over 100 people were crammed into the narrow hallway, packed shoulder to shoulder. The moment he was electrocuted, a huge crowd behind him got electrified as well. 10-odd seconds later, I cut off the current, leaving 9 bodies smoking slightly. The air was filled with a pungent smell of roasted meat and burnt flesh. The crowd exploded into chaos again. This beast Zhang Yi actually killed his neighbors, killed his brothers and sisters. We must butcher him for revenge. Brothers, let's charge together. Smash the door. A group of people grabbed a big wooden log and went wild, bashing it against the front door. The violent vibrations even made the water cup on my coffee table jump up. Yet I leisurely turned off the upbeat music, completely unbothered by their door-smashing efforts. The harder they smashed outside, the more amused I was. After dozens of hits, they sorrowfully discovered that the door hadn't moved an inch. Someone leaned in close to look for a long time and screamed, "This is a damn bank vault security door." Hearing this, everyone's heart turned half cold. Someone asked in despair, "Can't we break it open?" A bank employee shook his head bitterly, completely shattering their illusions. Forget wooden logs, you couldn't even blow this top-tier security door open with explosives. At this moment, holding my tactical crossbow, I quietly walked to the shooting port. Looking at the rabble outside, still chattering away to discuss countermeasures, I didn't even bother to aim, swiftly reloading the bolt with one hand and directly pulling the trigger. A sharp, piercing sound cut through the air, followed by a shrill scream. Someone yelled in panic, "He has a weapon! Watch out!" The crowd instantly fell into utter chaos, but the hallway was only so big, packed like a sardine can, making it impossible to run. I didn't care about that. I just kept doing 2 things from the doorway: reload and shoot. The power of a professional tactical crossbow, combined with specialized tetanus bolts, meant that a mere scratch would spell certain death in this resource-scarce environment. After firing dozens of arrows in one breath and feeling some blood on my arm, I turned around, went to the kitchen, and grabbed a bottle of Coke from the fridge, chugging it down. Meanwhile, seeing my front door standing impregnable and completely impossible to attack, the neighbors grew as anxious as ants on a hot pan. Despair spread. What do we do? The door is alloy and won't break, but these walls are made of brick and cement, right? I refuse to believe so many of us can't smash this breach open. Hearing this, a gleam of wisdom lit up in everyone's eyes. Watching this crowd cheer and leap with joy from inside the house, I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. No matter how many tricks they had, they couldn't outsmart my setup, a fortress built over a month of hard work. How could this rabble easily breach it? Outside, a brawny man gathered all his strength and slammed a heavy sledgehammer against the wall. The plaster cracked and white lime powder fell rapidly. Seeing this, the crowd's eyes filled with excitement, thinking they had found a breakthrough, and went wilder like they were high on adrenaline. However, the moment the brawny man swung his hammer for a second blow, a crisp metallic clang suddenly rang out. The huge recoil sent him flying backward, and everyone looked closely to see the web spaces of his hands split open, with fresh blood gushing out and quickly freezing in the low temperature, a deeply chilling sight. What kind of ghost situation is this? Everyone was baffled. What kind of wall could bounce a sledgehammer back and even injure someone? Someone stepped forward to scrape away the surface lime. There's steel inside this wall. Everyone gasped in unison, crowding around to look as the peeling white plaster revealed a cold, heavy black metallic luster. A neighbor cried out in a mental breakdown. "Why is this happening? Whose house uses steel plates to build walls? I don't believe this house is made entirely of iron." Unable to accept such despair, someone went crazy trying to pound other walls. In the living room, I curled my lips with disdain and full mockery. Could you possibly think of something I wouldn't? Sorry, my walls are all 20-centimeter thick, high-strength steel alloy. Even artillery shells can't blast through them. The owners of the entire building stared blankly and hollow-eyed at that metal wall, their hearts colder than the ice outside. Is this even a wall? Why would anyone be so twisted to build a house like this? Someone covered their face and wept bitterly, their mentality completely collapsed. Just then, the neighbor next door suddenly yelled, "What about the balcony? His balcony was changed into floor-to-ceiling windows, all glass. We can definitely get in from there." "Right! Since there are windows, there must be an exit. It can't be completely sealed." A group of people acted like they had grabbed a straw to save their lives, rushing crazily into the neighboring unit. Although there was a 15-centimeter gap and a railing between the two balconies, these obstacles were nothing in the face of crazy survival instincts. The area outside the balcony wasn't like the hallway, which was enclosed and held a tiny bit of warmth. Outside was a real ultra-cold hell. With howling north winds and flying snow, a person could be frozen into an ice pop in just a few hours. Yet Chen Zheng and the others had long since gone red-eyed. Rushing in meant possessing everything. A group of people howled crazily, leaping onto my balcony like zombies. I naturally sensed the commotion over here right away, echoing across the floor-to-ceiling windows. These lunatics braved the wind and snow, slamming frantically against the glass like tireless machines. Even when hurting themselves, they seemed to have lost all sense of pain, letting blood flow and freeze, with their eyes fixed solely on the food inside. The longing hadn't been so obvious when smashing the walls, but right now, separated only by the transparent glass, they truly saw how luxurious and decadent my life was. Potato chips, burgers, cola, pizza, roast chicken. These supplies acted like stimulants, plunging the residents on the balcony into total madness. Having been away from these foods for just half a month, they were as excited as if they were meeting their own fathers, using all their might even more desperately to smash that window. Sipping my coffee and enjoying this farce, I muttered indifferently, "Who told you glass is always fragile? This is custom-made bulletproof glass worth a fortune." I remembered back when the security company manager patted his chest and said a pane this thick didn't just stop bullets anymore, but artillery shells. Sure enough, as this bunch kept smashing, they realized something was wrong. They thought it was plexiglass that would shatter upon squeezing, but instead, their hands went completely numb from the shock, revealing tiny streaks of blood. Even artillery shells can be stopped. Do you really think you can stop it with those pathetic pieces of scrap metal in your hands?